Ladies and gentlemen, in today's video, I will be showing you the grand finale of a chess anime like no other. I am talking about the legend of Mittens. In early 2023, the Mittens bot took over the world. Here in June of 2025, the SENSEI bot has arrived. The two share eerily similar playing styles and voice lines. So what happens when they play against each other? Pandemonium. I will show you 3 games now. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this incredible spectacle. The student has come back to face the master. Game number 1. Mittens opens up with c4. I gained access to Mittens, paired these two against each other, and I couldn't believe what unfolded. And if you like this video, let me know in the comments, and maybe I will have them play a full-on World Championship style match. Sensei responded with e5, the most principled move, taking the center. This is the reverse Sicilian. White played knight c3, developing the knight behind the pawn. Black played knight c6, and white played g3, the most common setup in the English, putting the light-scored bishop on this diagonal, and also fighting for the center along with the pawn and the knight. Black responded in the exact same way. Right? Like Sensei, like student. The bishops developed. White played e3. Black brought the knight in front of the king, and that is exactly what Mittens did as well. When an unstoppable force meets an immovable object, who is going to win? d6 from Sensei. Castles. We have castles as well, and b3 and a3. Very patient first game. Very, very patient. Mittens not getting too aggressive with the move d4. It knows that when it clashes swords with Sensei, it's going to be crazy, right? It's going to be crazy. It wants to make as many preparations as possible. Sensei plays bishop to f5, and there we go. There's the move pawn to d4. It has arrived, and now Sensei takes all of the forward momentum of the protege, captures on d4, and attacks the integrity of the white position, the knight on e2. The pin is on the queen. That means there's more pressure over here. The next move is knight to f5, at which point the bishop will be attacking the knight. The knight will be attacking the pawn. The knight will be attacking the pawn. The bishop will be attacking the pawn. There's a knight standing behind that pawn, which cannot be defended because of the pin, and that would activate the rook. Mittens responds with pawn to f3. The bishop goes back to c8, and white advances in the center with the move pawn to d5. This is now possible because you have removed the bishop, therefore you are no longer pinned. This bishop is attacking the knight, but it is protected now. Knight moves to the middle. Now here there is a ridiculous move that's stock. Remember, this is Stockfish. The evaluation bar that you're going to be seeing throughout this video is Stockfish. So the Overlord is watching the gladiators fighting it out in the arena. Rook to a2 is the recommended move here, but white plays the move bishop g5. Sensei immediately striking back on the other side of the board, ready to bring out the queen to b6, attack the king, target the queen side, target the center as well. Mittens plays pawn takes c6, and after the recapture with the pawn, in game 1, it is black who has the advantage. But Mittens had an idea here. The idea was to play knight to e4, to take on c6, put the knight on e4, and actually it is impossible for black to stop the knight arriving to the f6 square because of the pin, and frankly, even if there was no pin, it's not possible to protect f6. You have to go back to d7. That's not going to help anybody because you're going to lose this pawn. So it looks like in the early game that the young protege is standing up to the entity that it learned everything from. The d6 pawn is falling, knight f6 check is there. But Sensei saw everything all along. Pawn to d5, not only attacking, but literally inviting this move. I mean, this move looks incredible. Knight to f6 check. You remove the defender of the position. If you could get a queen over here, it would be game over. But you're not going to be able to get the queen over there because Sensei responds with queen to d6, an immediate counterattack, and if the bishop walks away, black immediately untangles, and the knights just come straight down the side of the board. There's no way to run queen c5 check, etc. So queen d6, we have bishop takes, queen takes, rook e1. So we are setting up discovered attacks on the queen while black's pieces are kind of all still stuck on that last rank. The king is a little bit weak. But Sensei just takes the pawn on c4, completely unfazed, not afraid at all. And if this goes here, first of all, black has queen c5 check and queen e3 check, but more importantly, there's knight to f5, which is just a problem. Mittens weaken the dark squares just too much in this position, which is why Mittens sacrifices a pawn. Suddenly feeling the momentum totally shift, we have a queen trade, and I think basically long-term, white is saying, well, your only extra pawn is this weak one on c6, which I will put pressure on, I will capture, and then we will make a draw. So pawn takes b3, knight takes b3, and in game one, it is Sensei cruising to a comfortable position. Bishop to e6, bishop d5. Black is doing fantastic. It's a great position. Maybe you try to activate the rook on this rank. Rook c1, rook d8. Both sides making minor improvements. But knight g8 is letting Mittens off the hook. Maybe Sensei felt a little bit of mercy in this game. Now, it's not an easy position to play because, I mean, you can't move anything, right? Like you can't really move anything because white has a lot of pressure. Maybe white is going to play f4, remove the defender, and then try to win this pawn. But there were better ways, but we don't get any of those better ways. And now after this capture, rook d2 check. Pawns are completely the same. A, f, g, h, bishop for knight. In positions like this, you don't blunder a fork. And this is simply a draw. Why is this a draw? Nobody can make progress. The black rook completely dominates white's king. King is completely stuck on the first rank. You will never leave the first rank, and this rook can never leave, right? And this king can't get anywhere. If the king could get to g4 and maybe h3, there would be some winning chances for black, but it's not possible. Black is literally stuck in a box as well. This is the box, right? Black would not be able to cross any of that line, and that is what happened. And the first game ends peacefully between the two. They shuffle back and forth for like 50-something moves. I think we got close to 60. Nothing happens. Game one, a draw. There was a brief moment there that Sensei was better, but this second game, mind-blowing. So this one, absolutely mind-blowing. In this game, Sensei says, let me show you how it's done, all right? I invented this game that I taught you. Knight to f6, c4, and Mittens plays c5. Of all of the solid openings that you could have chosen, like the King's Indian defense, like the Grunfeld, like the Nimso Indian, Mittens plays the Benoni, which is a completely reasonable opening. The point of the Benoni is you kind of set up like a King's Indian, but you play c5 very quickly, and you get the structure where you trade the e-pawn for the d-pawn, white takes back like this, and the reason this is considered always a little bit more comfortable, black struggles to develop, black cannot put the bishop out, black has a spatial disadvantage, and there are positions where black plays a6 and white plays a4, and black never gets to develop this side, etc. But in this game, because of the way the opening was played, well, Mittens takes its chance, and it lashes out with b5. When a move like this appears on the board, you know something has gone wrong. That move can be taken by two different things. But the reason why this works is because white's king is in the center. If you waited even a move, b5 would no longer be possible, as you can see here. Why? Why does that matter? Well, after white takes, if white doesn't take, black's next moves are these, and they're very unpleasant. So you take. It looks like, well, knight takes e4. Mittens now lands a strike on Sensei, attacking this knight with two different things. And when the knight takes the knight, we have queen a5 check. This is the point. And the only reason this works when white's king is in the center is that you're going to win back material. So now black speeds up the position a little bit, trades a few pieces. Knight d2, queen takes b5. Totally chaotic position. Sensei grabs another pawn, and it's not just another pawn. It's an attack on the queen and an attack on the bishop. The queen goes to a6, and Sensei plays knight to c4. So again, white is putting a little bit of pressure early, right? White is putting a little bit of pressure early. There is an extra pawn. It is 3 squares away from queening. What makes this position okay, though, is that white hasn't touched the other pieces. Quite literally. White has not moved them, which is kind of crazy. White has 5 pieces on the first rank that are on home squares. Black plays knight d7. Now white castles. Now you just take a look at this position. You go, well, I mean, I think white is doing great. Like, if you give white a few more moves, you're going to solidify everything. You're going to trade a few pieces, and you're going to try to promote this pawn. Mittens fighting back. Knight to b6. Not the best move. Knight to e5 was better. Sensei captures on b6. Queen takes b6. Captures on c8. I just said, trade down the position, right? Now, White has an extra pawn here, but it's not so easy. It's not so easy to accomplish something with this extra pawn, okay? Because if you push it, it's going to walk right into the rooks, but that is still the best approach. White should play d6, and then when black goes here, white should defend the pawn, lose this one. Lose the pawn on b2. That's what Stockfish wants. Lose the pawn on b2 and get hit with bishop d4, where, I mean, this is, how do you break through, right? Well, Stockfish still thinks it's good. Sensei, however, plays a slow move. The move rook to b1. The idea, very simple. Don't let Mittens get the pawn on b2. But now black has time. And since black has blocked the pawn, it is standing on a light square. That is the difference. Had the pawn been able to go forward, it would have been permanently protected by a dark squared bishop. But now that's not possible, right? In the game, because of this, black now will stockpile pressure against this bishop. Look at this, Mittens lashing out with its pawns, trying to push this bishop backwards where it doesn't have any activity. Queen f3. Moving the queen out of the way was Sensei, so the rook would come to d1 and sufficiently defend the pawn on d5. We had f4, pushing the bishop back again, now rook d8. And not just rook d8, also rook f5. The pawn has been absolutely swarmed by the young protege. It cannot be protected, so white needs to do something else. White plays bishop c3, trying to remove one of the defenders of the king and try to get in. But now bishop d4, Mittens might have made a mistake. The idea there was that if the bishop took the bishop, the rook would take the pawn, and there would be a triple battery down here. But Sensei plays b4. And suddenly we're going to have some problems. Rook takes d5. Pawn takes c5. Queen takes c5. White is doing very well here. There are ideas to infiltrate on the back rank. And Stockfish here suggests rook b8 check, king h7, sack the rook, and go king to h2. Get the king out of the way of any checks so that rook to h8 checkmate is possible. This is so brutal. This is so nasty. Stockfish watching these two play is just nasty business, but Sensei doesn't see that. Sensei does this, and then rook b8, and still white is for choice, but not if you trade the rook. You needed to keep the rooks on the board, try to get down here, and keep them together. Instead, it's just an endgame where black's king is a little bit weaker than white's king, but if you look at the pawns again, A, F, G, H, looking like it is heading for a draw, but Mittens gets arrogant and plays this move, f3. This is an arrogant move. Sensei says, I taught you everything you know about endgames, and this is how you're going to treat me? Now your king is airy. There is a lot of space around your king. I'm going to walk my pawn all the way down here so that this pawn is always accessible to me, and I'm going to use my pawn to try to get into your position. This pawn is a weakness. It is not an asset. King to g7, h4, and even though it looks like the position should be equal, black is going to run out of space. When I was watching this, I was like, this is simply a draw. Queen e5. Now the queen comes here, threatening a checkmate. Mittens runs up. King to h6. Sensei playing queen c4. But wait a minute. That is a pure offer of a queen trade. And then there are some drawing chances. Mittens doesn't want that. It thinks that the endgame is losing. Queen f6. And now Sensei is totally dominating. Totally dominating the second game. King to h6. Queen c4 centralizing, but where is the win? Stockfish is showing that this position is winning, but if you let it run, it doesn't have a clear path to victory. Queen e3 check, rook a8. Apparently that was incorrect. Now a6. You are completely stuck. You have to defend this pawn. You have to defend this pawn. You can't move anything else. Rook d7. Now here the move, rook b8 was winning. Because you go rook b8, you take, and you put the rook on b7. That is the winning sequence. Queen f3 was played. Rook f7. Queen e3, rook e7. Where's the win? This should be an easy win, but where is the win? Apparently, you have to still put the rook on b8. Then you have to put the queen on b2. But this, which was played by Sensei, according to Stockfish, messes up the advantage. So we have another game. King h6, rook e8. And in the long run, that weakening of the position was bad for white. But Mittens allows a breakthrough again, and Mittens is losing. Now, rook to e5, the only move. The idea of rook to e5 is so nasty. It is a discovered attack on the h5 pawn. Rook e5 sets up pawn takes g6 ideas, which simply win. And if you play rook e5 here, this is now open, and rook e6 wins the game. Rook e5 is right there to be played, and Sensei doesn't spot it. I don't know how that's possible. These computers got like 2 seconds per move. Stockfish right away was like, rook e5. I had a feeling that it was winning. Suddenly we have queen f2 check, and Mittens is back in the game. I couldn't believe this. These two computers, I paired them against each other, and it was almost like they knew they were playing one another. They don't know. They're not real, right? I didn't tell Sensei it was playing Mittens, but it's almost like it saw itself in its opponent and couldn't put it away. This is an endgame where white is up 2 pawns, and yet it's a draw. How is that possible? The black king runs to h3. It runs to h3 to get out of the way of a check. So right now, the rook can't move because you would lose this pawn. If you move the rook here, I take on a7, you take on h5, and king g3, this is a draw. So white needs to find a way to get these pawns moving. White begins moving the king to f1. Rook a5, the king runs out. White is winning. I was looking at this, I was like, oh, Sensei is putting in the work. We are going to beat Mittens. Rook e5 check, king to f3, rook f5, king e4. This is winning, but where's the win? The king runs around, where is the win? I'm looking for the win. Rook c7, king here. Where's the win? You can't win the pawn, right? You can't, rook b7, king, you can't win the pawn. So where's the win? Black is now threatening to take this, by the way, and then take this. So you can only not take this when there is a check and a promotion. We can't move the rook, we can't move the king. Where's the win? So Stockfish here shows the winning idea. It's rook to g8. You threaten to queen, and you threaten to take the pawn and defend this. And you are up 2 pawns in an endgame, and your next 2 moves are g5, g4, g5, and you should win. Sensei just never played that. Sensei ran the king around the board, and then in this position, did not go for king g5. That's the only winning idea, by the way. The only winning idea. And if you play it too quickly, it doesn't matter. Like if you play, the king has to be over here. Instead of that, Sensei went here. I'm not making this up. I have no incentive to make up moves between 2 bots. I was flabbergasted. I was like, g4, pawn takes h5. It looks like you are simply running away. You're just going to make a queen. g3, h6. If g2, h7, you both make queens, I mean, I win. I win because it's check. But after g4, h takes g4, h5, g3, Mittens started giving checks. And this is when you realize the king has nowhere to hide. King here, check. King, check. You're just getting checked. And if you run too far over here, it's not going to work. Which actually happened a little bit later. The king, I believe, ran to f5. And then if in this position, you gave a check and the king went here, you lose. g2, g1 is a queen check. So the white king is stuck running around. It went to f5 at some point. Rook e7 is a horizontal defense. Rook g8, rook a7. Both sides are now threatening to promote. And in this position, check here, check, and back. It took 100 moves, but they made another draw. Sensei in this game had 2 moments to put the dagger through the heart of the young protege and didn't do it. Protege didn't do it. I was like, no, I'm unsatisfied. I looked at this game and was like, no, we need to play a tiebreaker. This is ridiculous. This is literally like in the movie. When the protege comes back as the villain, tries to take out the master, the master's like, I just can't do it. I can't kill him off. Can't do it. So I made them play one more game. And to win and take over the master, Mittens played the London. Fate of the universe on the line. You play the London. No way. c5. Sensei responding one of the most violent ways that you can, trying to get out the queen. And Mittens took on c5, which is that is a very bold move. The point is that now black is going to have to spend some time winning the pawn back, or not. Or not. Bishop to d6. And within the first 5 moves, Mittens has just grabbed the pawn. Grabbed the pawn. It has no intention of giving it back. It's going to play e3, bishop here, castle, and develop these pieces. But now Sensei shows you how it's done. It shows you that it was never afraid of this in the first place. First, we developed the queen aggressively. Queen b6. We attack the pawn over here. White defends it. Now black plays e5. A violent central strike. You already went e6. Now we go e5, trying to go e4. Mittens plays e3. Mittens is just 1 or 2 moves away from consolidating the entire position. Black plays e4, trying to disturb the white position. One of the best moves is to actually undevelop the knight completely, which looks ridiculous. The other good move is to go knight to d4. Sensei now plays queen b4 check. That's an attack on the king and an attack on the pawn. Mittens plays queen d2. The knights are staring at each other. The queens are staring at each other. Also, the queens are both staring at the knight, but the queen obviously is not staring at the knight because it's pinned. So now, knight takes d4, pawn takes d4, queen takes d6, and c4. From the opening, it is white who is better. Why is it white who is better? Black's pawn is overextended. White has very good central control. White's next moves are very easy. Knight to c3, bishop e2, castle, and put the rooks in the middle, defending the center, trying to advance, etc. Sensei senses that. No pun intended. Plays queen e7 back. White develops the knight, black castles, and we have bishop to e2. Now, at this point, the computer for black does something extremely, extremely high level. You see, if black plays this position slowly, like pawn to d6, and white castles, and then black develops the bishop, and then, white goes here, and then black goes here, and then white goes here, and then black goes here, what's going to happen in the long run is only white is better. Only white is better. This pawn is too close of a target to the white position. White is going to put the queen here, reposition the rooks, maybe put the bishop here, play pawn to f3, and in the long run, white will win this tug of war. So because of that, Sensei plays d5 immediately, offering the pawn up completely, making white make a very difficult decision. Do you take the pawn, do you ignore the pawn, or do you push the pawn? If you push this pawn to c5, black gets a completely rock-solid center. You will absolutely never get rid of the center. If I ever get to move this knight, I will maybe even create a pawn avalanche. However, if white plays c5, you get a kind of 3-on-2 situation, and in the long run, you could break through here and try to advance. Very difficult to know. Very difficult. Pawn to d5. Vicious move from the sensei. And Stockfish here shows that the move you don't want to play is precisely this one. Pawn takes d5 allows black to get simply too much activity. The pawns are now doubled, so they're clumsy. Defending them is going to remove the resources from the rest of the position. Defending them might also not be possible in the long run. So instead of taking the pawn on d5, Mittens maybe should have pushed or ignored. Now we have immediate punishment. Bishop to g4. The rooks are going to come in, both to protect and to attack. Mittens castles. We have bishop takes, queen takes, and here comes the rook. And suddenly, within just a few moves, all of the problems have been solved. Black developed absolutely every single piece. Black no longer is going to get overwhelmed. This pawn is overextended, but these two pawns are also very weak. I couldn't believe it. Sensei solved all the problems with a tactical move, pawn to d5. And now we have queen b4, and somehow, despite white having all the activity, all the central space, better piece coordination, it is actually black who is doing that. By the way, you look at the position, Mittens is up 2 pawns. The queens stare at each other, and this is protected. But a great move here from Sensei. Knight takes d5, defending the queen. Rooks are coming in, full pressure. The only thing you want to do here with black maybe is to not get back rank mated. You want to make sure the queen is breathing, or king is breathing room. Queen takes, knight takes. That's a fork. Fork. This is under pressure. It's not a threat because white has a discovered opportunity. But black now plays this move, king f8. This is an amazing move. You simply bring the king. Now you will have breathing room, and the king is going to get to the middle, which it's supposed to do in the endgame anyway. Mittens plays rook takes, and for a brief moment, is still up a pawn. In the previous game, it was Sensei putting on the pressure. Now it is Mittens who has an opportunity to put Sensei on the back foot. King d7. Kick out the knight with a4. f5. When I saw this move, I was like, that looks like an overextension. There's a reason why Magnus doesn't like to push pawns in the endgame. h4 is a ridiculously deep idea. You want to play h5 and you don't want to allow these pawns to connect. We have rook c8, knight e2. The knight is coming back, but the more time you give Mittens, the more it's going to conjure up some great play here. King to d6. And now we have a moment. Black is going to win this pawn back, or black is going to win these pawns. How is white going to generate anything here? Mittens has not shown much in this match, but here comes knight f4, and here comes the play for white. Rook to e1. Now we have very nasty ideas like rook to e6 and pressure on these pawns. And Sensei makes a mistake. Rook e6 check, king to d7. In this position, finally, after 3 games, Mittens gets its first and only opportunity to put serious pressure on Sensei. It plays the first move correctly. It is in a rook and pawn endgame. That is just a free pawn, and after we win that pawn, we go after this pawn, and then we promote our pawns. No. Pawn to h6. What is the idea of pawn to h6? You can't even get to this pawn. Like rook takes d5, for example. I know. The idea is rook g6! And the pawn would promote because the rook is stuck and it can't get around. There's no way to get to the pawn. The move pawn to h6 is not about winning the pawn on h7. It's about bulldozing straight through it. h6, and black is actually losing because the rook now has to acknowledge this threat. And in that time, white generates enough play, like king to g2, for example. And you start bringing the king, rook to b6, etc. That is the idea. You start bringing the king into the game. Pawn to h6 is the one and only move. It's been 160 moves between Mittens and Sensei. Mittens has not had a big opportunity yet. But it played what we would consider the human move. It took a free pawn. It missed h6 with the rook sacrifice. And after rook here, this is the endgame. And this endgame is crazy because black has 2 runaway pawns. White has 2 runaway pawns. It looks like when I first got to this endgame, I was like, oh, white is probably winning because white is the first one racing. No, black's pawns are sufficient counterplay. And now only one of these moves would be the draw, and Sensei finds it. Rook b7, rook f4, the pawns fall off the board, and this endgame is simply a draw. If you don't know rook and pawn endgames, you should. But the way you stop a pawn from advancing is you just can keep the king and rook in front of it. And especially if it's one of these 2 side pawns, that's all you do. You can literally just wait. There are some other concepts that you can know, like the Philidor position, which is when the rook defends on the 3rd rank. But these 2 played 3 games, and despite having 1 or 2 chances each, Mittens only had 1, h6. Some 170, 180 moves later, they made 3 draws. If we want to do a best of 10, I can try. I was actually shocked that Sensei did not win the 2nd game. And this game, I didn't even see the move h6 until I looked at the game review after. But Mittens and Sensei played out 3 draws. The anime script writers could not have done it any better. Let me know in the comments if we should run it back. That's all I have for you today. We just dropped the Ruy Lopez, the Spanish course on Chessly. So if you haven't checked it out yet, you should. The Spanish is a fantastic opening, playing it aggressively with d4. And if you've been a Chessly member, check it out as well. We got all new courses coming. We have, that's my alarm going off. Apologies. We have 3 levels of tactics courses coming out and much more. That's all I have for you today. Get out of here.